just a wonderful person, and raising the Neshama, having an Aliyah, and it's the third yard site. Okay, so we have Mazel Tov's Sheila Gayson in the recent birth of a great grandson.
Mazel tov.
Mazel Tov. And also for Sheila Gayson and the bat mitzvah of a granddaughter. Mazel Tov.
Mazel tov.
Arona and Rabbi Amram Hess on the engagement of their son Chaim.
Mazel tov.
When did he grow up? He's engaged already. You know, the kids are growing up very fast in this neighborhood, much faster than any other neighborhood I know of. Okay, other Mazel Tovs to announce? No, okay, so category 2, Refuah Shlema. And Menashe, good morning. And if you can call on people as they raise their hand, appreciate it.
Hold on, I gotta get the gallery. Well, I'll start with myself then. Dvoro Lana Bas Leah
Varlana Basleya,
and Ilana Bas Paya.
Lana Baschaya, also David Meir Bechai Tzipa,
All right, Chaim,
Zev, Chaya Riva Bas Yehuda's Dvora,
Chaya Riva Bas Yehuda Tevora,
and Zev Ben Leah.
Zev Ben Leah,
Thank you.
Louis.
Alon Ben Shenish Tepora,
Okay, Louis, you're muted. Louis, you're muted.
Mariam Yenta Baskito.
Maram Yentel Baskitl,
Jay, Barnes,
I have several. Rafael Nisan ben Adina Bracha,
Rafal Nisim Ben Adina Bracha,
Gadol Yitzchak ben Yehudit Abigal,
Yudal Yitzhak Ben Yehuda Abigail,
Achem Dov ben Roni,
Racham Dov Ben Yobroni,
Yeshua Lev ben Shenadina,
Yehuda Lev Ben Shenadina,
and Bluma Bas Enya.
Luma Bas Hanya.
all right, David,
Yes, Rabbi Hyatt, I don't know his name.
Yeah, we said it.
We already got
it.
I didn't, okay. Moshe Tuvia ben Hamdan,
Moshe Tuvia Ben Hamdan,
Rafael Hirsch ben Edel,
Paul Hirsch Ben Edel,
Reuben Yehuda ben Zisa,
Reuven Yehuda Ben Zisa,
Atara bas Rachel Yehudis,
Tara Bas Rachel Yehudit,
Yeshara Malka bas Leah,
Sharamalka Bas Leah,
Devora Ruth bas Sarah Imenu,
Varus Bas Sora Imenu,
and somebody asked me for Golda bas Rivka. She's a young woman who has blood clots in her
Wait.
legs, and it started getting blood clots in her lungs, and they found brain cancer.
Nama. Golda Bas, say it again, Golda Bas
Golda bas Rivka.
Rivka, before Shalema.
Michael,
Chavanomi Bas Dovachana,
Havanomi Bas Dova Chana,
Gabriela Chana Bas Leah Geula,
Gabriela Chana Bas Leah Gula,
Prosper Ben Aliza,
Oscar Ben Aliza,
and Marissa Bas Toby.
Marisa Bas Tobi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
all right. Anybody else or anybody who's not on video?
Yes, Udal Bat Rachel
Rul Bat Rachel,
and Eliyahu Chaim Svi Ben Milka.
Nurchaim Steve Ben Milka,
Thank
Avram Zev Ben Sora, Yehuda Lei Ben Malka, Chavalea Bas Esther, Chana Bas Leah, Miriam Tivia Bas Shifra Sprinza.
Anybody else? Okay, category 3 is yard sites this week.
Hold on for a second. This is Yale. I have Zlata Chaya Bas Abraham Zev.
Zlata Chaya Bas,
Abraham Zev, my grandmother Lottie Rosenson. I think some of you may have known her.
Bas Abraham Zev.
University Boulevard West.
Thank you.
Okay, Shama Shalom and Leah.
Thank you.
And for those who did not see it on the shorts, so we should mention anyway, Jake Edison, Shlomo Ben Yosef Nassan.
Shlomo Ben Yosef Nassan.
Michael?
Yitzchak Ben Yechiel Michal Halevi.
Yitzchak Ben Yechiel Michal Halevi. On the Shama Shalom and Leah, it's a fuss for our learning.
Okay, did I forget anything?
You covered it all, Jay, beautifully.
And welcome to Tzvi.
Thank you, Tzvi, for joining.
And I think, Rabbi, it's over to you.
Okay, very good. So we are on Chav Zayin Amud Beis, getting close to the end of this portion. Chav Zayin Amud Beis, we are talking about whether or not Simanim are D'oraisa or D'Rabbanan. In other words, whether it's a rabbinic source, which we see the pasuk, but we've distinguished that pasuk for other reasons. It's the pasuk in Devarim. So the Gemara goes back and forth, and even in this last section last week, there was a support for Simanim D'oraisa, and we left off that Simanim are D'Rabbanan, at least among the Tanoim, Simanim are D'Rabbanan, and we introduced something a little unusual, which is what we call I don't know a better term, but we call it a super siman. In other words, you have simanim, and then the Gemara introduces something called a siman muvak, of which there is a machlokas between Tanoim, whether a siman muvak, which is a super siman, even if you hold simanim midrabanan, so a woman cannot get divorced because you can't get divorced from a rabbinic edict, only from a Torah-supported edict. Nevertheless, the siman muvak that we talked about is a machlokas in the Tanoim. So now we're about maybe 10, 12 lines from the bottom. Now the Gemara turns to a different question. The Gemara says, Omar Rava, right? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, yeah, about maybe 10, 11 lines from the bottom, middle of the page there of the wide lines. So now the Gemara is going to say, if you say that Simanim ad Rabbanan, then what's the basis? In other words, the rabbis have to have a basis somewhere they can't just make it up. So if the Rabbanan say you can use Simanim, there's got to be a source. Even if you want to say Simanim are midrabanan, but what's the source? Where do they have a right to say it? In other words, just because the Torah doesn't say it and they want to make it okay, the rabbis are not allowed to introduce a new concept. It has to have some basis somewhere. So now Rava is going to introduce us to the concept of what is the basis, even if you say Simanim midrabanan, still, what's the reason the rabbis say you can do it? Amar Rava, if you now conclude that Simanim are not midaraisa, where do what's the chutzpah? How do the rabbis come and say that Simanim are okay if you say it's not midaraisa and you can't learn it from the Torah? So that's the Gemara's question here, the good question, because now we have to understand the source. So the Gemara gives an interesting answer. You know what the reason is? It's a theory. It's just like the finder finds something and he announces it. When someone gives a siman, so too, when he loses something, he'll also be able to recover it with a siman. In other words, the rabbis are now latching on to the following theory. You find something and you say, you know what? I don't have any obligations. I don't know the Torah tells me that I have to Hashavas Aveda, that I have to return anything. But I'm going to be a good guy. And I'm going to announce it to try to return it. What's my motive? My motive is that if I lose something, someone will do the same thing for me. That's what Rava wants to hang his hat on now and say that should be the reason why Simanim D'Rabbanan are okay, is because of this theory of reciprocity that the finder is going to enjoy the same courtesy if he loses something. So that's what the Gemara wants to say. So Amalei Rav Safra says to Rava, can someone do a tova for himself with money that's not his? What's going on over here? The theory is that he is going to announce, I found such and such, and you have to give me a sim and I'll return it to you, it's not his money. It's not his ownership. It's someone else's. He clearly found it and he wants to do the right thing, wants to be a good Samaritan, and he wants to announce it. So Rav Safra says, have you ever heard such a thing, that a person should do a teiva la'atzmo b'mammon she'eina shelo? This is not his money. This is not something that belongs to him, but he's going to do a favor for himself because he wants reciprocity when he loses something. So everyone's going to say, oh, Reuven's such a fine guy. Look, he went ahead and announced something that wasn't his. When the shoe's on the other foot, when Reuven loses something, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go out of our way for him too. That's in fact what's going on here. Rav Safra says you can't do that. You can't piggyback on someone else's property and be a do-gooder to yourself.
Excuse me, Rabbi.
Yeah,
When somebody finds something at that moment, they don't know whether or not it's totally hefker or it belongs to somebody. So right away, he has to think about, well, I can be a good guy or not. I can just take it because nobody else, it's found.
correct.
And so how do they get around the
So
notion?
we want to encourage him to be a good guy, right?
But the Rabbanan don't have rules that say whenever you find something, you have to know it's not yours. Because they'd have to have something rigid that says it's automatically not yours. Now, if you want to be a good guy, these are the methods of doing that. But they don't have such a decree like that.
Jay, that's exactly the kasha. The Gemara is asking this kasha. Where do the Rabbanim come to say that you have to be a good guy when you find something? We're saying Simonim is lav d'oraisa. There's no Torah ordained rule. So the rabbis can't just make it up. So what are the rabbis saying here? When you find it, you should announce it. Why should you announce it? Where does it say you have to be a good Samaritan?
What's their source of that kind of?
What's exactly the Rabbis kasha? So the Gemara wants to give an answer that, you know what it is? It's human nature. A person finds something, he knows it's not his. He figures to himself, you know what? I'll be a good guy. I'll announce it, because if I announce it, then the shoe's on the other foot and I lose something, someone will announce for me. In other words, that's the theory that the rabbis are introducing. Says Rav Safra, what do you mean you're introducing such a theory? That's ridiculous. You're introducing a theory that someone should announce because maybe someone will announce for him when the shoe's on the other foot. You can't do that. You can't force someone to do that. In other words, they use the verbiage Yaseh tova b'mammon she'eina shelo. You're using someone else's money or someone else's article of money to benefit yourself. That's rabbis can't introduce such a halacha.
Yeah.
So that's the kasha. That's exactly the kasha. How do the rabbis have the chutzpah to make such an edict? Yeah.
Excuse me, Rabbi, we have Joe just joined and also Jonathan, if they have any dedications.
Go ahead.
Nothing for Joe. Jonathan? You're muted.
I have a refuah shlema, Maryasha Meta Bat Risha Miriam.
Mayasha Meta Memisha Miriam.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah. So that's the kasha. That's the very kasha the Gemara is asking, is what's the rabbinic source for saying that you should announce? If it's not a Torah source, you can't make it up. You can't just say, I'm going to do it because I want to be a good guy. Good guys, there's no good guy theory in the Torah or even among the rabbis that they should do it because a guy should be a good Samaritan. So that's the very kasha the Gemara Rav is asking.
So Rabbi, before you get to what the extent of or the basis of the rabbinic rule, what are they saying is the basic compliance with the Torah law? There is a Torah law in Hashavas Aveda. So what are they saying minimum?
Adam, you have to have Adam. Adam or bust. You either have to have Adam or you have nothing. So the Simonim aren't in the category of where someone can get it back. So if you say that Simonim are not midoraisa, only Adam, then what's the rabbinic source? And you're going to tell me the rabbinic source is this is a good Samaritan on Mammon She'eina Shelo. That you can't do that. Ella, says the Gemara, No, I'm going to give you another theory, a theory as to why the rabbi said what they did. Ela nichale lebal aveda, not the finder. Nichale lebal aveda lemei avsiman lemishka lemi yoda de edim lesley umeimar omar kula alma lo yoda simani muvhakim didav va'ano yahivni simani muvhakim didav shekalnala. The loser of the object has a very, very plain theory. I lost an object. I'm of Nogea Bedavar, right? This is not the finder anymore. This is now the Baldover. So the rabbis say that a person who loses something, not a finder, a person who loses something would rather have the opportunity of using simanim, even though someone else may come and take it away from him, because he figures I will have the best simanim and someone else won't know what I know, logically, right? And therefore it'll come to me. So he's taking a risk, because with simanim, someone could guess or someone could say something outlandish and it happens to be true and he gets it, whatever. But he figures I have a better chance of getting it simanim because I have no witnesses. Otherwise, it'll lie in the hands of the finder forever, right? And we've seen it, and we'll see it again in the Gemara later. You have to hold it. There are some circumstances where you can't return it. So he figures to himself, you know what? I'm better off with the idea that a simon can get it. Now that makes sense. It's not the finder who's taken advantage. It's the actual Balaveda. If the Balaveda loses something and he says, you know what? I'll take my chance with simanim. Says the rabbis, we're going to allow it. So that seems to be the reasoning behind the rabbinic edict that simanim work. Again, simanim is lav deraisa right now. So the only way you can get it back deraisa is through Eidim. So what do? So came the rabbis and said, you know what? We're going to do a toiva to a balaveda, and we're going to say you can get it back through simanim, and you'll take your chances. So that seems to resonate well. So because it's not a happenstance for a finder, it's the actual balaveda. Let's take a look at Rashi. Anybody can come and take it. My tama made the yada. In other words, he's taking a chance that someone else may come up with a simon. My tama, why is it okay? Made the yada, he knows the edim lesle. If he's going to rely on edim, they'll never come. I'm better off that it goes back to someone who says simonim. Because it's not likely that someone else will know the simonim, rather just me. So he takes his chance. That says Rava is okay. So now we have a source for the rabbinic edict because we want to help the Balaveda. Break the Gemara. Wait a minute. You're going to tell me that it's a plus for the Balaveda that he loses it. What about Hodetnan? We learned in another Mishnah. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Oimer. This is about 5 lines from the bottom. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, and we had this Gemara before. You'll remember. Echad halove mishlosha yachzeh lelove. If someone finds a bundle of documents that show debt documents, in other words, a bundle of 3 documents that show that Ruvain borrowed $100 from Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda, and they're all packaged together, right? So he owes $100 to 3 separate people, and a finder finds that. So the question is, what should I do with this document? Clearly, it fell off someone's the back of his truck or out of his bag or something like that. What do I do with it? So remember, we said in the Gemara, Yachzeh lelove. You return it to the lover. Why? Because we said that the answer we gave is because when there's three documents that one person is responsible for, the likelihood is it didn't fall from all three, it fell from the one. So if it falls from the lover, we give it to the lover. What does that mean? That means he's paid off the loan. Okay. Now, flip side, we learned shlosha shalovim in echad. If there are three documents that fall from one person, yachzer l'malveh. Then we say that it's the malva who loaned. Reuven was the malva, the lender to Shimon Levi Yehuda, and he dropped the document because again, it's not likely that Shimon Levi and Yehuda all dropped their document at the same time and was found in a bundle. A bundle usually would give proof to the person who's the individual that it was the malva and he had not yet gotten paid. Okay, so those are the two scenarios. Zak the Gemara, are you telling me that using our theory that a person who loses documents would rather that they be found and he can give a siman and get it back? Do you think that this love would be happy that it goes back to the malva? Of course not. Of course, he's not happy that it goes back to the malva because that means he now owes the malva that money, right? Because it was a loan of $100. So you want to come and tell me that the reason why the rabbis enacted a rule of return, which is not midaraisa, because they'd rather have the opportunity of capturing something that's theirs with the siman, even though they take a risk. This fellow clearly doesn't want that. He would rather that it never be returned, the finder keep it, and therefore he never has he doesn't have to pay on the loan. So, you know, say the Gemara's kasha. The Gemara's kasha is you're telling me there's such a thing as nichale balaveda, that the balaveda benefits from the fact that he could possibly get it back to Simanim. Here we have a balaveda who says, I don't want that. I don't want the opportunity that it should go back to the rightful person. I'd rather it be kept by the finder and never announced. This way, I'm not. I get away with $100. This Mishnah of Rabbi Gamliel is saying, how can you say that the rabbinic edict is because people want this? People don't always want it. You made a statement. Everybody wants it because it's an opportunity to get it back. No, they don't. They don't want it. They don't want the opportunity of retrieval where it hurts them. That's the Gemara's kasha. So a hod the time from Rabbi Gamliel that in the case of three documents to a love or three documents to a malve, either one, someone is not going to be happy. So why do we say that he should announce it? Don't announce it. Just walk away with it. Keep it. Do what you want with it. There shouldn't be such a rabbinic edict that has to be announced. That's the Gemara's kasha, right? Rashi el hoditnan v'amru lahachzel lo malve below edim b'simin. He just has to give a simin and he gets it back. This omeshlosha hava umeshlosha lovim. And what's the simin? The simin is, there are three documents there, one from Shimon, one from Levi, one from Yehuda. Oh, right. Okay, right. Then this belongs to you because you're giving me the simanim. And if it fell from the lover that he already paid, maybe in fact he did pay. Let's just say out of the blue that this lover paid this loan and somehow didn't get the document back. Possibility. So what good is it to him that it goes back to the one who gives simanim? Now he's going to get a second crack at the apple. He's going to get a second shot to collect his money, and the lover loses. So he says, to this borrower, it's better it's better that it be in the hands of the finder forever. Because as long as it's in the hand of the finder, and he doesn't return on the malva, below the other malva. maybe the Malva happens to know the Simon and it doesn't really belong to him, and he's going to get it, and he'll enrich himself. So basically, the kasha here is, it's not always a benefit to the finder, to the balavet, to the one who lost it, to get it back. So why are you telling me that that's the basis of the rabbinic ordinance, that you can get back something that you lose with simanim? It doesn't always work. It doesn't always work. That's the kasha, right? That's the kasha. So the Gemara wants to find a way to somehow get over this issue, because at the end of the day, simanim are a valuable asset to the finding process, or to the process of Hashavas Aveda, even if it's not midoraisa, it's midrabanan. So the Gemara answers, you know what? I'll tell you a difference. Amalahem, Amalei. So Rabbi says there's a distinction between Rav Gamliel's situation and the regular situation, where we say that we do allow for an announcement. Hasam svarahu. You know what? In Rav Gamliel's situation, there's a different, something else is brewing. What? It's called svara, logic. Echad halova mishlosha yachse lelove. If 3 people borrowed, one person borrowed from 3 people, and you find a packet of documents, let's say they're bound together or taped together, and they show 1 borrower and 3 lenders. You tell me your seichel. Who do you think dropped it? Forget about the halacha. You don't know halacha. And you see Ruvain's name on 3 documents. To Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, he borrowed 100 from each, and they're all wrapped together in 1 bow. What's your inclination? That the Lova borrowed the money. The Lova borrowed the money. And if they're all wrapped together in 1, you wouldn't say from your seichel, Shimon dropped it, Levi dropped it, Yehuda dropped it, and somehow it got itself wrapped up in a package. That doesn't make sense. The svara is that Reuven dropped it. Reuven had 3 loans. He clipped them together. He paid them off, and he took them all back. 1 from Shimon, 1 from Levi, 1 from Yehuda. That's seichel. We're talking about logic. Says the Gemara, svarahu. It's logical that it belongs to Reuven the Loveh. We're not going to say that 3 people each dropped a shtar halva, a document that you owe me money, and somehow they came together into 1 bundle. That doesn't make sense. So he says, it's not because of the reason that you want to say, because the rabbis enacted a takana that Shimon is good. He gave a Simon. No, it has nothing to do with Simanim. It has to do with Svara. Svara who echad halova mishlosha yachsel halova. The gabe lova shchichi, because by the lova it's more likely that he has it because it's taped together. Gabe malva lo shchichi. Why would Shimon have Levi's lending document or Yehuda's document? So we're using pure logic.
Rabbi, maybe he went ahead and he sold the 3 notes to a different person. Maybe he discounted it out.
You may be right, Jay, but we're not. But so in other words, someone is calling it out. Who I found these documents? Who do they belong to? So you're right. If you were that 3rd person, and it's your money, then you would come with simanim. You'd say, you know what? I bought those notes. I bought them on discount. They belong to me. But you don't show up. The only people who show up are the Lova and the Malva.
But how do I know that somebody found it? How do I know someone found it?
You're right. There could be a 3rd person. Yeah, but the 3rd.
They have to announce it.
Again, he just goes and announces it. I mean, you can't always say, how do you know? You're right. He may not have heard about the announcement, but presumably he's living in this shtetl. And he bought the notes, and then he lost them, and then he heard, hey, someone is in the base medrash and is hitting the shulchan and is saying, I found a bunch of notes. Who do they belong to? Give me some simon. Again, we have to use just the normal course to say that if he lost it, he somehow would hear about it. Again, we're going to learn in the Mishnah later on a larger sense, how you announce. But let's just say he announces it. The theory is that if someone comes with simanim, he gets it. Rabbinic, not deraisa. Gemara asks Akasha, why would he be better off? There are times when he doesn't even want the simanim to be produced. Right? That was the kasha from Rabbi Gamliel by Lova and Malva. Teretz is by Lova and Malva. Forget about the simanim. There's a seichel, there's a svara to say that if the document are bound together from one love, it belongs to the love. And further, the last line of the Gemara, the same theory in reverse. In other words, if you find the documents that are all clipped together with one malveh, then the logic dictates that the malveh put all of his notes together and it dropped out of his pocket. So he should be the one to get it, to be able to collect on his notes, because it's not likely that 3 borrowers all lost their notes and they somehow came together in one bundle. So the Gemara wants to distinguish Rav Gamliel from our Gemara by saying that forget about Rav Gamliel's case. Rav Gamliel's case is an anomaly because there's a seichel, there's a svara as to why, if he gives simanim, it belongs to him. So we don't say that crashes and burns the whole theory of simanim midrabanan, because really simanim are midrabanan, and it's a good thing because it gives the Baal Aveda a chance to retrieve, even though the Torah doesn't use it. The rabbis have found a good theory, and Rav Gamliel's case isn't really on point because Rav Gamliel's case is about seichel, it's about svara. There's a svara why this is. It wouldn't have anything to do with necessarily. And again, if you come up with other cases of logic, of svara, then they can also be excluded. But this is a good example of why it shouldn't interfere with the actual underlying theory that the rabbis are introducing, but rather the theory is sound. This is a one-off because of the fact that it's an overwhelming seichel that something belongs to someone if it's bundled together in that way. All right. So the Gemara attempted to slug up the theory, and we found an answer. Okay, very good.
Excuse
Now,
me, why?
yeah.
Is svara stronger than a kal v'chomer?
Yeah, but we're not really dealing with a kal v'chomer here. Logic is something that it's pretty powerful. I mean, it's not one of the main elements that we usually introduce and say, whether it's Gzeir Shava, Kal V'chomer, or those kinds of things. But what do you think is the Kal V'chomer here? Why do you suggest that? Why do you? Is there a reason to? We're not pitting one against the other. There is no Kal V'chomer here. We're just introducing something called svara, which is not one of the Shlosha Esrei Midas. It's not one of the things that we normally think about, but nevertheless, it's a distinguishing feature, and the Gemara says it's distinguishing enough so it doesn't hurt our situation. But go ahead.
What I was asking is not so much I didn't see a kal v'chomer for this case, like you said, but in the ranking order of importance.
No. A kal v'chomer it clearly has greater strength. A kal v'chomer has great Gzeir Shava, kal v'chomer, Hekish. These are all we say it in our tefillah, right? Rabbi Shmuel Aimer. He lists all the different types of rabbinic introduced rabbinic theories as to what constitutes our halacha. So svara is not one of them. It's actually very down at the bottom, but nevertheless, he's using it as a wedge to say that you really don't have a stira to the principle of rabbinic collection, because it's too obvious on its face as to why Rabbi Gamliel's situation is different than ours. Again, in the realm of rabbinics, you can argue that okay, I can accept it. It's so clear on its face that we have to accept. Yeah.
So they'll poskin.
In other words, the guy's not. The whole idea was that a person benefits if you use some money, and here you're saying he's not benefiting because if you don't use some money, then he never has to repay the note. But wait a minute. It seems like he owes that money. The real logic is he owes that money. Why should we give him a pass that he should get away with not paying it and say that that the finder has to keep it and can't give it to who it logically belongs to? That's what the Gemara is saying here, is that otherwise there might be an injustice done because he's going to sigh a sigh of relief. Whoa, I owed him $100. The guy lost it, can never get it back. Some of them don't work. Now I can save myself $100. That would be an injustice. So the Gemara says, you know what? We're not going to allow an injustice to happen. So even though it's not the norm, we're going to use a svara, and we're going to say this guy probably, okay, 80-20, 90-10, whatever, probably is the guy who lost it, because it's not likely that three borrowers would each lose a document and then somehow they would find themselves in a bundle. It must have been the malveh who dropped it and he is owed the money. So again, we're talking about seichel here, svara, seichel.
So svara can be used.
So you're right. It doesn't fit into the pantheon.
So svara can be used
Again.
for poskening shilas directly?
You know what? That's an interesting question. It's a very interesting question. Can svara be used to paskin a shaila? So when a rav gets a shaila and he's looking for edim or simonim, or he's looking for something that will help him paskin, then so the question is, svara be meaning seichel. So is logic a teretz? Is logic a teretz? So I would dare say that if this situation today came before a rabbi and the rabbi and he had to paskin, to whom does this bundle of shtaras belong? That he could use this sort of rabbinic. He could use this seichel, this rabbinic edict, and say that, you know what, I have to hold it in balance, and it's more likely than not that this guy lost it. Again, he's bringing simonim. He is bringing simonim. The teretz is that the reason why it's a shaila here is because Rava said that it always benefits. The simonim always benefit the one who really owns it. So the Gemara wants to say, but wait a minute, there's a guy out there who can get away with not paying his debt if you don't return it. So the teretz is, yeah, but why should we give him that break? So I think the answer would be, Jay, that you hang your hat on simonim with Rabbanan. If he comes ahead and gives simonim, that he does get it. He does get it, because actually using I mean, the rabbi has to apply some seichel as well. It's not just, okay, black letter and this is it. And he's maven davar mitoch davar, and he says he brought it mesimen, and it's highly likely that this packet didn't just fly together min hashamayim, so that it came together because this one guy lost it. So I think the answer would be yes.
Thank you.
Anyway, good question. Ask Rabbi Rosenbaum what he would do in that circumstance. But in any event, right? So we gave a teretz.
But it's not a general principle that anybody can say, based on my svara, my logic, this is what what the answer is.
No, no, it's not something that people can just go around saying that they're svara, but here the Gemara wants to make a distinction on a different level, saying that the rabbis enacted a law, and then it's the challenge is from Rav Gamliel, but that law that the rabbis enacted that you're saying is the benefit isn't always a benefit. So the Gemara gives an answer. No, don't confuse it with a circumstance where someone where it's so obvious that it belongs to someone that so that the benefit that the rabbis enacted is a good benefit, but it's not on a sort of a practical halacha level. On a halacha level, it's the question is are the simonim legitimate? They wouldn't get into the svara business. They would say, are the simonim? They wouldn't worry about the fact that someone's getting caught up here and has to pay back money that he probably owes, and he wishes weren't back in the hands of the malvin. I mean that's I'm sorry, that doesn't work. So I don't think that as a halachic matter we have to get into svara. But you're on the right path. Svara itself is not a tool by which the rabbis would normally, enact the halacha. But let's take a look at Chav Chesed and Aleph, because now there's another challenge. Okay, so we didn't get a successful challenge from Rabbi Gamliel. Elahod Etnan, we learned, and we saw this earlier in the Mishnah on Daf Chav. Matzah tachach shel shtaros. Someone found a roll of shtaros all rolled together, or a guda shel shtaros, or a package of shtaros. Harizeh yachzir. And someone comes and gives a siman and says, "Oh, that's my roll of shtaros or my package of shtaros." Harizeh yachzir. He has to return it to the fellow who gives the siman. Same kasha. So why are you telling me that that's a good distinction, and that's why the rabbis enacted this principle of that it's good? Same situation. He would rather it not be returned. Rashi. Because of simonim, he says, there were 5 shtaros rolled together, and they had this and they had that. Okay, we're giving it back. And same question. In other words, it's the same kasha as Rabbi Gamliel, but with a different set of facts. The fellow who is the loser, in other words, the fellow who winds up having to pay the debt that these shtaros are telling us, he doesn't want this back in the hands of the malveh. That means he has to pay. He would rather that the finder keep it. So rabbis, what good are you doing me by enacting this wonderful halacha that when documents get lost, then you go to the shtibel and you pound on the table and you say, someone lose a packet of documents, give me a siman. You're not doing anybody any favors. Someone is going to lose out here. Right? Who's going to lose out? The guy who has to pay the debt. So believe it or not, this convinces Rava that he's on the wrong path. Okay? So this convinces Rava that simonim can't be midrabanan because there is no logical basis. We've been arguing this morning that if you say simonim are not midaraisa, what's the logic that the rabbis introduced that simonim are okay? You need edim. Go to get edim. You get edim, fine. No edim, no. Where does simonim come in? So we gave an answer that it's better for the person who loses it to have the opportunity of reclaiming it through simonim as opposed to never getting it back. Okay. Then the Gemara said, we have this exception from Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. And we spent the last few minutes saying, no, that has nothing to do with it, because there's a svara, there's a very clear seichel why you should give it back to the fellow, and therefore he has no argument. Now the Gemara comes with another argument. What happens if you find tachlich shel shtaros or guda shel shtaros? Then you return it, and the guy gives a siman, you give it. But still, you see another example where it's not good for everybody. The whole principle of the rabbi's edict was it's a good thing for everybody to say that simonim are available for as an identifying mark. So now the Gemara brings a second Mishnah, which we had here, to show that it's not good for everybody. You make a generic comment, everybody benefits. When the rabbis enact such a rule, it's not good for everybody. So now Rava takes heart and he says, you know what? I think I spoke too soon. When I said it's good for everybody, it's not good for everybody. So he retracts. Unusual, but he retracts. And he says, forget about it. My theory as to why it's good, why the rabbis say it, I have to retract. Ella Omar Rava. So what does Rava say? No, Simonim D'Oraisa. I'm going back to the first theory that Simonim are D'Oraisa. Why? Because we have a pasuk in the Torah, Diksiv, and we read all those pasukim in Devarim. Diksiv v'hoya imcha. So one pasuk said that this lost object should be by you ad derosh achicha oso, until your friend, meaning the one who's claiming it, comes and investigates. Frek the Gemara of Chisala Datcha Shitnena Kodem Shidrushenu. It says ad derosh achicha oso. So and again we have this in Chav Zayin Amud Beis, the same Gemara. Chisala Adaka, does it enter your mind that did it enter your mind that you would give it to the person who claims it just like that? No. Ela Droshu, we learn im Ramayu or Eno Rama. You have to investigate whether the person who is claiming it is a thief, he's a cheater. You look at his reputation. Is he a guy who is not trustworthy? He's coming to make a claim. How do I know he's the owner? Zok the Gemara, lav b'simonim. Isn't the way that you collect it b'simonim? In other words, he has to give a siman. So we're back to square one. The guy comes and you found something, you have it in your possession. He comes along and it says it's mine. Oh, it's yours? Huh. Who are you? Well, I'm the owner. So you said I'm the owner of it. So the guy who's holding it says, okay, let's investigate here. I'm not just going to give away this diamond ring to you because you say it's my diamond ring. So you investigate. How do you investigate? Says the Gemara, lav b'simonim. Isn't it because now there's no witnesses, of course, otherwise witnesses would carry the day. Lav b'simonim, isn't it with simonim that, okay, give me a simon. I remember as a kid, someone lost something. We would play this game because, people would bring things to school and everything, and invariably someone dropped it. So my friend would say, "Oh, that's my ball. I dropped it." Yeah, give me a simon. Give me a simon. I mean, that's the way we spoke. He said, "Give me a simon. Show me that it's yours." Okay, so in other words, on a small scale, okay. On a large scale, how else is someone going to retrieve something? Ela b'simonim. So he says that's the raya midoraisa, because it says v'haya imcha drosh achicha oso. And what's the drasha? You have to investigate whether he's telling the truth. La b'simonim shmamina. So we learn from here that it's midoraisa. So it's a little fickle, but Rava wanted to say it was a Rabbanan. He was slugged up one time, he gave an answer. He didn't have an answer the second time from the Mishnah of Tachrich Shel Shtaris, so he gave up. He said, it's not the Rabbanan, it's Doraisa. How do I know it's Doraisa? Because it says in the Pasuk, Vayimcha Drosh Achicha, and the person who's holding it, the finder, is going to do an investigation of the person who's claiming it. And what investigation is he going to do? He's going to find Simonim. He's going to say, prove to me that it's yours. So he'll prove it with Simonim. Elamai, Simonim, now back to Doraisa. So Rava wants to come back and say, it's Doraisa. Okay, so at face value, that's where we are. So now, according to Rava, Simonim are Doraisa. because of the pasuk also that you have to investigate the person who's claiming it. And how do you investigate him? With simanim. So we see that simanim are as good as Eidim. Shemamina. That's the answer. Omar Rava, says Rava, wait a minute. Now, okay, so he made this statement, it's deraisa. Then in the very next statement in the yeshiva, he said, Omar Rava, im timtza lo simanim deraisa. If you're going to say simanim are deraisa, now you have to understand the setting of a yeshiva. He's learning this in the yeshiva. He's giving this over to Talmidim, and he's going back and forth like we did this morning. So the Talmidim are now saying, okay, Rebbe, so you've just given us a raya that simanim are deraisa from the pasuk in the Torah. So now the Rebbe goes on and says, im timtza lo simanim deraisa. Now, if you want to say simanim deraisa, the next line of the Gemara is im timtza loymar. The Talmidim are saying to him, what do you mean im timtza loymar if you want to say? It is. You just said it. You, Rava, just said simanim are deraisa, and you brought a raya from the Torah. Why are you now continuing the shiur and say im timtza loymar if you want to say? What does that mean if you want to say? You can't say otherwise. You just said it. Beferish, it's deraisa. So the Gemara is showing us that the Talmidim are jumping in and saying im timtza loymar ho pashat le simanim deraisa. You just said it. You just brought us 100% raya from the Torah that simanim are deraisa, and yet you go on and say im timtza loymar if you want to say. What choice do you have to say? You're saying im timtza loymar as if there's a choice. There's no choice. It's clear, 100%. Simanim are deraisa. It's a beautiful thinking here, is because the Gemara is really holding Rava to his feet. Rava just concluded after all this Gemara that it has to be deraisa, and then he goes on to say im timtza loymar. You can't say im timtza loymar as if to say there's a doubt. You just declared officially that simanim are deraisa. So, and for the Gemara, mishum de'ika lameimar kedesheninim because this is interesting, because you could say, like we just learned. In other words, since we said that simanim are deraisa, so he's saying that because others say there's another way to find it. What is that? Eidim. So in other words, the im timtza loymar, for our purposes, isn't coming to weaken simanim. It's saying im timtza loymar if you want to say that you use simanim, as opposed to eidim, which is the best. Eidim is the best. So if you want to do that, then blah, blah, blah. So he's saying to the Talmidim, don't jump. Simanim is deraisa. But when I use the word im timtza loymar, it's to contrast it with eidim, which would be the better source. The best source of proof is eidim. Someone comes along and says, you know what, this belongs to Reuven 100%. I saw he bought it. I know he owns it. That's ironclad. But in lieu of eidim, the Torah says you can use simanim. So, and that's Rava's conclusion. Rava's conclusion from the Torah, from the line of the Torah, is simanim are acceptable, except that im timtza loymar, if you want to say simanim, meaning as opposed to eidim. So he's telling us, Talmidim, don't jump on me, because I don't mean to weaken simanim. I agree with you, simanim is midaraisa, but there's something a little bit better, as Rashi says, kedesheninim be'edim, that eidim would be a better source if you had eidim.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
When they say eidim, is there a number of eidim? I mean, I know for certain things you have to have two, right?
Two. Yeah. We'll see in a minute. It's definitely two, that you have to have two eidim who say that it belongs to him, and here's the proof. So,
how about simanim? Do you have to have two?
No, simanim, you just have to have a siman. In other words, some identifying mark. Witnesses are different, because when it comes to testimony, we say the Torah tells us al pi shnayim eidim, that you have to have two witnesses. When simanim does not give us a minimum. So if you found one good siman and then that carries the day. So, and so then again, so the fact that the Talmidim jumped all over him, he's saying, wait a minute, I didn't mean to cast doubt. I just meant to say, if you use simanim, imtim salam simanim, as opposed to witnesses. Now, we have a few minutes left, so I'm going to just hit. We're going to start this because from here till the Mishnah, the Gemara gives us a contrast of two people who come with different forms of proof. So let's just say a few of them. Simanim v'simanim. What happens if two people come into Bezdin, each with simanim? I have a siman, you have a siman. Says the Gemara, Yoniach. In that case, you have to leave it in the hands of the finder until Eliyahu Navi comes. In other words, there is no one better simanim than the other. To your point, Scott, I give simanim, I can give 10 simanim, and you can give one siman. They're equally strong, and therefore the finder can't determine who it really belongs to. Therefore, Yoniach, he has to put it in his safe deposit and say, when Eliyahu Navi comes, he'll give me the answer. Simonim ve'edim, okay, to our question here, what happens if one comes with simonim and one comes with edim? Yonasun labal ha'edim. Then you give it to the person who has the edim, because edim are stronger than simonim. Now, to your question, Scott, simonim ve'simonim be'ed echod. What happens if one person comes with a siman and another person comes with a siman and one witness? He schleps along a witness together with the simanim. The other guy only has simanim. Says the Gemara, Eid echad command lese. The one witness is as if he didn't exist. The yaniach, and you have to leave it until Eliyahu comes. In other words, the fact that I bring one witness with my siman, cancel out the witness. It's a siman. The other guy brought a siman too. It's a siman versus a siman. Yaniach, we leave it in the hands of the finder. Now, says the Gemara weiter, Eide Ariga ve'Eide Nefila. What happens if I bring along, I have this beautiful sweater, and you found a sweater, and I say, no, it's my sweater, and I'm going to bring along the weavers who weaved it for me. I paid them a lot of money to weave this sweater. Eide Ariga ve'Eide Nefila. So one guy brings witnesses that this beautiful sweater was knit for you, Scott, and you paid him $100. And I bring edim that say it fell out of my basket. So who's stronger? The Eide Ariga, the one who brings witnesses to show that he was the owner because he bought it, or the Eide Nefila, the edim that say, they're both edim, but they say, oh, wait a minute, we saw it fall out of your basket. And for the Gemara, Tanosan la'edin nefila, we give it to the one who brings the edin nefila. Why? The Amrina Zavune Zavne Umina Shachrin and Awful. Yes, we know you paid $100 for that, Scott, but you sold it. You sold it to me, and I bought it from you, and now I dropped it. So in other words, in the chain of custody, you were the first owner, and I'm the last owner. So therefore, edin nefila, the fact that there are edim who say it fell out of your basket, they have to be stronger, because you can't say because I was the one who had it contracted to be made that it's mine forever. You sold it. In other words, we assume you sold it. So therefore, the edin nefila are stronger. Now, what happens if two people come in? We'll stop with this one. And say it's mine, and the other one says it's mine. And what are the simanim? The simanim are midas arko or midas rochbo. One person says, you know, I'll prove it's mine. This object is 3 feet long. And the other one says, oh, no. It's mine. It's 1.5 feet wide. So you have one who describes the length of the garment or the object, and one who describes, in this case, we're talking about a garment. And the other guy describes the width of the garment. So what do we do? Who do we find?
If it doesn't fit, you must have quit.
that you would think, says the Gemara, Nosu lemidas archo. You give it to the one who describes the length. What does that mean? Why do you give it to him? Why? The midas rochbo shiur komishayale kidei machzelo mora b'koin. This is fascinating, because let's say it was a talus, and a talus, let's say it was not a square. Okay, oftentimes the talus is a square. Let's say the talus was 5 feet in length and 3.5 feet in width. I'm making it up. So I say 5 feet, you say 3.5 feet. You give it to me. Why do you give it to me? Says the Gemara, because when you put the talus on and you wrap it around yourself, people can, with their eye, measure the width of the talus by the way you wrap yourself around it. It's an astounding teretz. In other words, the width is something that someone else can ascertain just by looking at how you're wearing the talus. But midas arko lo mishtayelo, the length someone can't ascertain. So what he's trying to say is that in this particular case, we give it to the one who says archo, because he must be the owner because he knows the length. Width, anybody can figure out. That's essentially what the teretz is. Width is easy to figure out. He puts on the talus, he's about to wrap himself around, you eyeball it and you say, it's about 3.5 feet. Okay, so you don't have to be an expert to have picked that number. The length, however, the eye is not trained, according to what he's saying, is not trained to be able to recognize. Says the Gemara, and again, where this comes from, I can't really tell you, but the Gemara says that in that kind of situation between Orcho and Rachbo, we go with the one who says Orcho because it's more likely that he's the right owner. All right, so there are several more examples like this, and so we'll finish and then go into the Mishnah. But again, the Gemara is giving us a seichel here, is that there are times when you have to use, especially when it comes to simanim. Okay, simanim are midaraisa. We're going to accept simanim. Eidim are better than simanim. That we know. If you come with 2 eidim, I come with simanim, I carry the day. 1 aid, nothing doing. Now the Gemara is going to tell us what happens if 2 people come and each have the simanim of one type or another. So the Gemara goes through this, and we see a seichel here. We're going to go further and finish, but we see a seichel here that sometimes one person's simanim are better than another person's simanim. Not all simanim are created equal. Like you say, if it fits, you got to acquit. So simanim do have some power, and we have to ride with it. So, and sometimes the Gemara gives us examples that are a little bit difficult to understand, but nevertheless. All right, so Mitzvah, we'll finish this and get into the next Mishnah. But at least for our purposes in this whole discussion, we have finally concluded that simanim are deoraisa. Siman, and we know from the Pesukim in Devarim, that's where we learned it from. Simanim are deoraisa, but not as good as Eidim. Eidim still prevail, and if you have an aid, that's the best. But if you have a siman, it also works, and you have to return it. All right, Kevin.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah, the Mitzvah, we'll finish this piece next week, Chaf Ches Amar Aleph, and then we'll go weiter.